So good evening, everyone, and welcome to our second Envision Pittsburg workshop here at City Hall. A couple of housekeeping notes before we jump right in. First, please be sure to sign in so that we can keep everybody informed about this project moving forward. Second, bathrooms are located right behind the elevator and staircase to the right. And lastly, if you need translation, please see Ana Villalobos at the back. Si se necesita equipo de traslación, por favor, hable con Ana detrás de las mesas. So my name is Hector Rojas, and I'm a senior planner that is managing the general plan update for the City of Pittsburg. I'd like to acknowledge a couple folks here from the city with us tonight. From the City Council, I see Mayor Benales, Councilmember Killings, Councilmember Kraft there in the back, and Councilmember Scale Preston. If you guys can stand up and just wave hi to everyone. Did I miss somebody else? Councilmember Holland White. Apologize for that. And then I think I might have seen our city manager or representative. I'm sorry, here we go. So thank you guys for coming here and listening from our community. The general plan update, or as we're calling it, Pittsburg, Envision Pittsburg, is an extremely important project because it will tackle critical questions facing our community for the next 20 years. In that time, Pittsburgh's population is expected to grow from 72,000 to over 91,000. We're also expected to add 5,300 new households and 2,800 new jobs. Where should this growth be focused, and how can we manage the traffic that might come with that growth? We want to hear your thoughts tonight on this and other transportation-related questions. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Ben Ritchie from De Novo Planning Group, who will lead us through the rest of tonight's workshop.
Thank you very much. Well, good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming out. I see a lot of familiar faces from 2 weeks ago on Saturday. We had a fantastic first workshop. Can I get a quick show of hands? Who's coming to their first general plan workshop? All right, a little more than half. Fantastic. So for those of you who were here the other day, we're doing a similar introductory overview, so just bear with me while I kind of go through General Plan 101. And then today we're going to have a new set of activities and a new topic of focus in terms of transportation and mobility. So I'm Ben Ritchie. I'm a principal with De Novo Planning Group. I'm joined by Elise Carroll and Beth Thompson, also with De Novo. And I have Colin Brigette with me this evening too. He's from TJKM, and they're our transportation sub. So they're going to be working on all things traffic, mobility, bike ped, all things mobility related for the general plan update. So very briefly who I am, my firm has been retained by the city to prepare the general plan update, and that also means leading all these public workshops, preparing all the technical analysis, and ultimately delivering the city with a comprehensive general plan. So that's who I am. So for those of you that don't deal with planning on a daily or regular basis, what is a general plan and why is it important? So the general plan serves as the city's playbook for land use and planning decisions. So when the city gets development applications, when the city's planning for future infrastructure, where do we need to expand the roads, the bicycle network, do we plan for adequate water supply? A lot of these key decisions are all guided by the policy direction contained within your general plan. So it's used on a very regular basis by your city council, your planning commission, your staff, and your other important boards and commissions here in the city, as it provides that high-level blueprint for how the city is going to grow and change over the next 20 years or so. So there are a lot of topics that are touched on in the general plan, and I'll talk a little bit more about the elements that go into it, but we look at everything from mobility, recreation, and services for the youth. We look at shopping, jobs, economic sectors and indicators, public safety, providing for adequate housing, and making sure that we plan and manage future growth in a balanced manner that's going to still make sure you realize your vision for this community 20 years from now. So why do we need an update? So as Hector mentioned, there's been a lot of changing in demographics. The city's grown quite a bit. Your existing general plan was adopted in 2001. So you're coming up on 20 years with this general plan in place. It served you pretty well, but typically we like to see them updated every 12 to 15 years or so. So you definitely do. There's been a number of changes in key state laws. So we've got new laws on complete streets, new laws on how we measure traffic and review development projects. We've got a lot of laws related to environmental justice and social equity, laws related to climate change. So the regulatory environment in California has changed quite a bit since your last general plan was adopted. And it's also a really good opportunity for the city to get back out and engage its community members. It's a chance to reconnect with residents, business owners, property owners, to make sure that the city's on the right track. And as we look towards the next 20 years worth of policy decisions, are we going down the road that's representative of what the residents here in Pittsburgh envision for themselves? So this document's going to define a long-term plan or vision for growth and resource management. It's going to build upon past successful planning efforts that the city has undertaken. It's going to be very customized and tailored to make sure it reflects the goals and the priorities of the community. These are not one-size-fits-all documents. It's going to be very much crafted to be Pittsburgh specific to address your very nuanced challenges and priorities here locally. So what all is in it? So the state of California has the general plan planning guidelines, and the state dictates that there are 7 mandatory elements that must be included in your general plan. These include land use, transportation, open space, conservation, safety, noise, and housing. So while the state tells us that these topics have to be addressed, the city has a tremendous amount of leeway in terms of how you address them. So you get to come up with customized policy approaches, customized goals that again are reflective of your community's values and priorities. The city also has a tremendous amount of leeway in including optional elements, because there are topics that are important to the city of Pittsburgh that aren't necessarily spelled out in the state planning guidelines. So what we're planning to address as part of this general plan update are the topics of urban design, downtown, community health and wellness, public facilities, youth and recreation, economic development, and growth management. So it's a very broad, all-encompassing document that's touching on a lot of key policy decisions for the city. So some of the big picture questions that the council identified as being priorities in terms of things to address as part of this general plan update. And this is certainly not an exhaustive list, and we're going to be building upon this list as we work our way through this process. But some of these concepts include sustainable growth, infrastructure, education, maintaining a good jobs housing balance, having complete neighborhoods, looking for opportunities to reduce traffic congestion, making the city a walkable and bikeable community, promoting community health, addressing issues related to affordable housing, addressing issues related to homelessness, open space conservation, and climate adaptation. So we asked a lot of you who were at the first workshop some of what the other big picture issues and challenges are, and we're going to be circling back on those with our third workshop. But I really want to emphasize that the input and the feedback that you guys provide us this evening and in subsequent public workshops is absolutely incorporated and dealt with as we're working our way through this general plan update. The city has made it very clear that hearing from residents is of paramount importance, and we take that role very seriously. So just a quick snapshot of the process that we go through. This is generally a 2-year process to update the general plan. So we don't just show up, write the thing, and say, here you go, we hope you like it. So we go through a number of phases. There's definitely some overlap. These aren't absolutely discrete, but our first phase is what we're in now, which we're calling Envision Pittsburg. And so this is an opportunity for us to hold these public workshops, reach out and engage the community. We're also preparing what we call an existing conditions report. I like to say it's hard to effectively plan for the future if you don't have a solid understanding of what your starting point is. So this big, thick existing conditions report is going to document everything from your demographics, your market and economic conditions, your housing conditions, air quality data, noise, traffic, just providing a really robust snapshot of our starting point in time right now as we embark on this general plan update. We're also going to be providing a very detailed summary of all the public feedback that we've gotten in the initial visioning workshops. So we'll be preparing a vision and opportunities report that starts to lay out some of the big picture priorities that we're going to be addressing over the next 1.5 to 2 years. Then we move into our second phase of work, and this is where we start to look at different land use alternatives. How might your land use map change? Are we going to look at our opportunities for new growth in areas that aren't currently developed now? Do we want to revisit some development patterns in areas that have already been developed? So we're going to play around with the land use map a little bit and come up with a couple of different map or growth scenarios that will dictate what can be built where over the next 20 years. And we prepare an alternatives analysis to go along with these different versions of the map. So when we come back to the community and say, hey, what's the best growth plan for you guys? You can understand what the traffic implications are, how much population growth we might expect, what the economic considerations are, rather than just plopping down some colored maps and saying, pick one, more yellow or more red. So we try and provide a good supporting analysis. The second stage is when we're also going to start to put the actual draft general plan together. So we'll be working with staff, city council, planning commission, and the community to come up with the goals and the policies that are going to make up the bulk of the general plan itself. And then moving into the third phase of our work program, it's where we finalize the draft general plan, and it goes out for a public review and comment period. We'll have additional community workshops to present the plan, answer questions, and get feedback. And we also do our requisite environmental review, and we prepare what's called an environmental impact report, which also goes out for public review and comment. So that way you can understand the environmental implications of the new map and the new policy document that you're on the verge of adopting. And ultimately, we go back before the Planning Commission and the City Council, seeking to adopt the general plan and certify the EIR. And that's essentially the conclusion of our work on this project. So as I mentioned, community engagement is really a key component of our work program. So we've already done our kickoff meeting with City Council and the Planning Commission. We're in our second of 3 visioning workshops, and I believe it's May 13th for the final one, but don't hold me to it, I've got that on a slide here coming up soon. We're planning a grand total of 12 check-ins and study sessions with the Planning Commission and or City Council. We'll be doing a number of community pop-up events, so you may see us at Farmers Market or Arts in the Park or different community events like that where it's an opportunity for us to not do a formal workshop, but get feedback, answer questions, and just keep community involvement going. We'll be meeting directly or by phone with a number of key stakeholders, so that could be the Chamber of Commerce, the school districts, Los Medanos, so there's a number of stakeholders that will be meeting directly. We also have an online presence, so if you take one thing away from this evening, please jot down the website address. It is pittsburg.generalplan.org, and I'll make sure I get that up on the screen again later, but again, pittsburg.generalplan.org. So if you're taking notes on this presentation, this will be up online. It's your one-stop shop for all things related to the project. So, hey, I came to a meeting, haven't heard anything for a couple months. When's the next meeting? Or where's that background report we were talking about? Or where the heck are we in this process? Or I just thought of something, I want to email the planning team. Stop at the website. So it's live, and it's just going to grow over time as we finish different milestones. Everything gets uploaded to the website. So great resource to stay involved. In terms of our short-term schedule, we're very busy and hard at work behind the scenes right now. So you guys see us here at these workshops, but there's a lot going on back at our shop right now. So we've already done our council kickoff, and we're midway through our visioning workshops. We are planning to publish the existing conditions report and the market analysis, most likely publicly available in June. We're working on that right now. We're preparing a memo that kind of does an audit of your existing general plan. So what's in there now, what's working, what do we need to adjust, what should we retain? So that should be coming out later this month. I mentioned the land use alternatives report. We expect that later in the fall of this year, most likely November. And we'll start work on the general plan policy sets later in the summer, working our way through the fall into the end of the year. So that's kind of the game plan here for the next couple of months in terms of what we'll be up to. Fantastic. So thank you for indulging me on the recap. So at this point, I'm going to hand this over to Colin. He's going to walk you through some findings and some information related to transportation and mobility here in Pittsburgh. And after that, we're going to jump right into our workshop activities. So I'll give it over to you.
So I'm going to lead you through a series of slides that summarize the existing general plan and transportation vision. And we'll also summarize some recent trends with regard to transportation patterns relevant to the city. And then we'll divide, at each table, we'll go through some group exercises involving maps where you'll be able to identify your key transportation issues, challenges, gaps. You'll be able to define the vision you'd like to see this general plan take with regard to transportation, and then at the end you'll be able to prioritize. So first I'm going to start by going through what does the current general plan have to say about transportation and mobility. And as you all know, transportation is key not just to be important to your quality of life and access to and from home and shopping and work and so forth. Transportation is also a key part of every city's economic development strategy, and that's the case here. The current general plan in 2001 had several key themes, and the three themes most relevant to transportation are, first of all, to capitalize on regional transportation assets to attract job growth. The BART stations, the access to Highway 4. A second key component was increasing linkages between different parts of the city. That was important to the city's economic development strategy as well. Maximizing opportunities for transit-oriented development was also mentioned in a number of the elements. That was seen as a real growth opportunity. So, as Ben mentioned, the general plan is divided into about a dozen elements, and one of those elements focuses strictly on transportation. The other 11 or so elements focus on other topics, but nonetheless, transportation is important in those elements as well. For example, the land use element designates activity centers as being desired for pedestrian-oriented development as one example. The land use element emphasizes the need for connectivity between neighborhoods, which includes walking, bicycling, automobile travel, parking, and so forth. There's a growth management element that places an emphasis on regional transportation planning. The urban design element has quite a bit of discussion of desired street types, and the urban design element notes the importance of street design to your city's character. So what type of streets do you have? Are they walkable, attractive streets? The urban design element recommends smaller blocks, narrower streets, on-street parking, street trees. A key theme of the urban design element is it really recommends that streets should be designed in more of the traditional urban pattern, not a suburban pattern. Similarly, the downtown element identifies pedestrian scale design as a key asset of downtown. It's part of what makes downtown attractive to people to live and shop and so forth. One note, at the first workshop, there was, I believe there were some comments supporting creating some one-way streets. And just as an FYI, the downtown element in 2001 had taken the opposite approach of recommending that one-way streets should be converted to two-way, because that was viewed as being more attractive, better able to attract customers to your business, you get more people passing by. But nonetheless, it's something you could rethink as part of this general plan update. The economic development element, again, places a big emphasis on taking advantage of transportation access with BART and the highway and so forth. So finally, we're to the actual transportation element. The transportation element is essentially your roadmap for how you want the transportation network to develop over the next 20 years. And it includes sections on motor vehicle travel, bicycle, pedestrian, transit, and also transportation demand management, which are strategies to reduce traffic and so forth. The transportation element defines your street network through a series of, each street is classified either as an arterial, a collector, or a local street. So the streets that you live on are generally local streets. Arterial streets are your busier commercial streets, and collector streets are sort of in between. One area to think about upgrading this current general plan is street classifications tended to focus on motor vehicle travel. So they weren't necessarily consistent with the other sections that were emphasizing pedestrian-oriented development and so forth. The transportation element includes a section on the desired bicycle network, and as many of you probably know, the city is also currently preparing an active transportation plan that will take a real in-depth look at the bicycle pedestrian network. And so the transportation element will include a map of the existing bikeway network and also what are the desired future bikeways. And so in this case, we'll incorporate what's in the active transportation plan. Pedestrian facilities are a key part of the plan as well. This map shows pedestrian gaps and then also opportunities for improvement. And around your table, you'll have a copy of each of these maps when you're going through the exercise. This graphic shows collision location. So safety improvements are of interest and are a big part of what should be in the transportation element. What's interesting here is, I don't know if you can see, but it shows the number of collisions at each location. This big number here, 26. There's one intersection of, I believe it's Loveridge and next to the Walmart. It has 26 collisions in 5 years, and there's no other intersection that had more than 11. So that's sort of stands out unusually high. A couple more graphics, probably hard to see, but they show bicycle collisions and so forth, and pedestrian collisions. That I'll add, there was not a location where bicycle or pedestrian collisions were concentrated to the extent of that traffic collision number. Travel time to work is a big topic of interest in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has relatively long commutes. You can see the blue is Pittsburgh compared to the county, the Bay Area, and California. So this shows the percent of Pittsburgh residents that have a commute of more than 45 minutes. So it's 41% in Pittsburgh, only 25% for the Bay Area, and then 20% for California. So probably no surprise, Pittsburgh residents have long commutes. This table here shows the mode of travel that Pittsburgh residents use, and it's fairly similar to the county and the Bay Area as a whole, but about 2/3 drive alone to work. The transit rate is actually pretty good. Let's see. Oh wait, transit rate is 10%, about the same as the Bay Area. Carpooling is high in Pittsburgh. Bicycling and walking are low, but not necessarily all that different than other suburban communities. So several state requirements have come along since the last general plan update. Two that I'll mention. One is there was a state bill that requires that environmental documents evaluate traffic impacts based on vehicle miles traveled, with the goal being to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by lowering the per capita rate of vehicle miles traveled. And that's a change from how traffic studies have evaluated environmental impacts in the past. In the past, the focus was on traffic delay at intersections. And so keeping VMT down will be a bit more challenging for Pittsburgh given those long commutes. So it'll be a topic to discuss further. And then there was also a Complete Streets Act passed about 10 years ago. It requires, when cities update their general plan, they need to incorporate complete street components. Pittsburgh General Plan already does a pretty good job of incorporating bicycles and pedestrians and transit and so forth. So overall, Pittsburgh is in conformance, but nonetheless, it's a good opportunity to take it to the next level with this general plan update. And then just briefly, some recent improvements throughout the city. The city's been upgrading signal timing at different intersections to reduce delay. The city's been installing safety improvements, radar detection devices to sort of display people's speed to try and slow down traffic, pedestrian crossing improvements, and so forth. So with that, we'll go to our first activity, where at each table you have a large map. It's about a 2-foot by 3-foot map. Turn that over. And what we'll do is for this first activity, we're going to focus on gaps, barriers, and issues.
Just to kind of reiterate, so we are identifying problem areas geographically within the city as they relate to transportation. So automobiles, bicycle, walking, transit, and safety related. So if there's a hot spot or a problem area, you're going to slap a sticker on it, make as many additional notes as you like on the map, and then there's a whole bunch of these other figures out here on the table that have data that you may want to look at. So we've got information on the bike and ped network, and these are just supporting information maps. So off and running.
Discussion. We discovered that safety was number one with a bright marker. And then we just were kind of a little dazzled because all the rest of them sort of had equal weight. So we had trouble deciding which the next importance would be. But we said pedestrian improvements would be number 2, automotive improvements would be 3, bicycle/electric scooters would be 4, and transit improvements would be 5.
All right, disclaimer, these are all number one, but for the purposes of this exercise, we work together to identify transit improvements as being number one. We do believe that if we improve access to transit, then all of these things kind of fall in sequence behind. Number two would be safety improvements, especially around school zones. Number three would be automobile improvements, specifically the timing of turn lanes. Number four, pedestrian improvements. And number five, bicycle improvements.
We were given at the beginning about how many people spend an abnormally large amount of time commuting, that we decided that automobile improvements was number one, and then safety improvements was number two, pedestrian number three, transit improvements four, and bicycle improvements five.
Points were initially addressed, and it might help to alleviate some of the other issues. Automobile improvement would be second on ours. Number three would be safety improvements. Number four, pedestrian. And this is no disrespect for the bicycle guys, but number five is the bicycle. As we know, until we can make it a little bit more conducive to ride bicycles, it's a pretty dangerous venture out there.
All right, thank you
Very much. All right.
Number one, we have pedestrian improvements, provide new or improved pedestrian crosswalks. We would like blinking crosswalks on Leland. Number two, safety improvements. Number three, automobile improvements. Number four, transit improvements. And number five, bicycle improvements.
Fantastic.
16 areas in the city that needed work, and seeing that this was the activity to funnel answers to this, we came up with as our number one priority, because there's nothing more precious in life, safety improvements. Number two would be pedestrian, even though that kind of relates to safety. Three would be automobile improvements. Four would be bicycle, and then five would be transit.
All right, thank you very much. All right, well, I want to thank everyone for coming out this evening. One last slide up there. So as I mentioned, pittsburg.generalplan.org, that is the website. And our third of our three initial visioning workshops will be on Monday, May 13th, 6 to 8 p.m. We'll be upstairs at the council chambers, and we'll be focusing on land use and community design. So as I mentioned, for those of you at the first one, the themes are changing. So please keep coming, bring friends and neighbors. We've been having some great turnout. You guys have been fantastic participants. So hats off to the community. You guys are showing up ready to play ball, and we greatly appreciate it. So that's all we have this evening. One last thing, please leave all the maps and worksheets here. If you didn't bring it with you, please don't take it with you. We want to make sure we get all the maps together. Thank you. Have a great night.